If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Free Radio Player app and listen wherever you go.
Sports 1440, Edmonton's sports leader, welcomes you to the basketball show.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry with 0.6 of a second remaining.
The basketball show is powered by the 3x3 Basketball Association and the Hoop City 3x3 at West Edmonton Mall, July 31st to August 3rd.
Here's your host, Paul Sir.
And welcome to the basketball show on this beautiful Saturday morning. We've had a great stretch of weather here in Alberta's capital city. I'm Paul Sir, so pleased to be with you to be talking hoops today. Emma Foose is our guest producer today. She is standing in for Ryan Reed, who Ryan is one of the people I know that has about 27 jobs, and he's at one of them today, and we had a conflict, but Emma, good morning. It's great to have you here.
Good morning, Paul. It's great to be here.
Well, Emma is going to do a remarkable job standing in, and very excited to be working with her.
It's big shoes to fill.
They are big. Well, literally. Ryan's about 6'6".
Yeah, he's about a foot taller than I am.
He's a tall guy. He's got big feet. And Ryan, I hope you're having a great time over at the Oilers. And Ryan, like I said, is a very busy, multi-talented guy, and he does a lot of work for the Oilers, among many other things. We got a great, great show today. Our guest lineup is just stacked with people who really know the game of basketball. We're going to start with the Toronto Suns' Ryan Wolstat, and we're going to do a deep dive into the Toronto Raptors, who have won 4 of 5. And you know what? They've looked good doing it, and they have beaten good teams in that 4 out of 5 victory streak. So we're going to talk with Ryan and see what he thinks about this team finally getting healthy, starting to show signs of life, and whether or not this is the foundation for building a successful franchise with a couple of other additions. We also have in Joe Morgan, and Joe is a longtime friend of mine that we got acquainted when we were at the other station with the basketball show in its infancy, and Joe was on many, many times. Joe works out of Los Angeles. He works with Fox, and Joe, in-depth knowledge of the NBA. Then we have Reed Clarkin. Reed is the CEO of Sport Edmonton and also has what's called the Fresh Nets Foundation. And if you follow social media, you may have seen all of the great work that Fresh Nets have done around the city. After our 3x3 event, the Hoop City event in downtown Edmonton last year, Reed, along with Fresh Nets, along with the 3x3 Basketball Association, along with the support of the city of Edmonton, Explore Edmonton, went around to every city-owned hoop around the city, replaced backboards, replaced rims, replaced nets, to give people, to give kids in particular, of course, but to give people all around the city great access to basketball, to good quality basketball hoops around the city. And Fresh Nets is working hard right now replacing hockey nets similarly around the city as well. So Reed joins us at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock, and then at 11:20, we have our 3x3 segment, our weekly 3x3 segment with Paige Crozen. And Paige hails from Humboldt, Saskatchewan, longtime member of the Canada Basketball women's 3x3 team that went to the Olympics this past year, finished 4th. Also just won gold at the AmeriCup in December in San Juan. And Paige is one of the top 3 players in the world. And she has a very interesting story, and we're really looking forward to having Paige on the program. Other than that, we're going to jump into 3 from Deep in just a moment after we get to our poll question and give you the ways to get the information to us. And then we'll dive into 3 from Deep. But first of all, our text line, 1-833-401-1440. Again, 833-401-1440. Text your questions, your observations, anything you'd like to talk about, anything you'd like some commentary on. Send it in. We'd be happy to discuss it. Emma's going to keep an eye out for any texts that might come in. Our poll question for the day is a positive one. Emma, we're going to do a glass half full question for the day today. What is the biggest pleasant surprise, team-wise, of the NBA season so far? The team that has been the most pleasant surprise of the NBA season. Is it the Oklahoma City Thunder with the great Canadian MVP leader, I would say right now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, so OKC? Cleveland, who is starting to show a little bit of more talent, of being human. They were on such a roll, but last night they lost to a Philadelphia 76er team without Joel Embiid. So that was kind of a surprise. But some of the other good players, such as Tyrone Maxey and Paul George, really stepped up last night and had great games as Philadelphia downed the surging Cleveland Cavaliers, the very tough Memphis Grizzlies. And every time I think Canadians hear that word Grizzlies, it's a bit of a heartbreak because they know the Grizzlies comes from the Vancouver franchise that bolted out of the beautiful coastal city and headed inland into the United States to Memphis. But the Memphis Grizzlies have been outstanding, and that is with Ja Morant missing a lot of games and being injured. They're a deep, tough team. Again, Canadian content is very, very important on that team with Zach Edey, who still looks like he is the front runner for Rookie of the Year. And Emma, wouldn't that be something to have the MVP in the NBA and the Rookie of the Year in the NBA be Canadians?
I think that would be super special. I think I'm loving seeing the amount of Canadians that are infiltrating kind of American-led sports and becoming superstars. It's awesome.
It really is, and so far Donald Trump hasn't found a way to keep them out. So let's hope that. Surely I jest, but Zach Edey is a legitimate Rookie of the Year contender, and I think what's exciting about Zach Edey and his impact on the Memphis Grizzlies team is that he is everything that it seemed like the NBA was going away from. A big, traditional 7'4" center who plays mostly back to the basket, although Zach can step out and occasionally take a three, although certainly that's not a point of emphasis. But what Memphis is building on is his physical presence in the paint, his ability to defend in the low post, to change shots, to rebound effectively, finish around the rim. And he's been doing all that. It's not like every game Zach has big numbers. He certainly hasn't. But he has been very, very effective, impactful, and Memphis, I think, has exceeded all expectations. And speaking of which, the fourth team in our biggest pleasant surprise poll question is the Houston Rockets. I don't think anybody, I think of all the teams we're talking about, it's even more of a surprise to see how well Houston is doing compared to the other three. I'm not saying they're the biggest pleasant surprise because you may have a favorite in one of those other three teams. But for me, Houston is a big surprise because they've been dismal the last few years. They've been an organization in chaos. Freddie Van Fleet went there. Last year, the season was not good. And now this year, they're good. And they're beating good teams. And that's what's interesting is they're beating so many good teams. And they're in virtually every game. So the Houston Rockets have been great. So these are four interesting choices, each with its own case to be made for the biggest pleasant surprise of the NBA season. OKC, Cleveland, Memphis, and Houston. And again, please send your put your vote in. And our text line once again, 833-401-1440. All right, I have to talk about some numbers, and these numbers are ridiculous. This past week, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 54 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. 54, 8, and 5. The thing, when you watch the box scores, and I've been watching basketball box scores since I was a little kid. I grew up in the state of Iowa, and our state paper was called the Des Moines Register. And they had a sports section that was famous for decades and decades, called the Peach, because they put a peach-colored insert into every paper as their sports section. But I loved the NBA box scores. I love the ABA box scores, just seeing, field goals made, field goals attempted, and watching. And when somebody would have a special game, it just stood out. It was like it jumped off the page at you. But talk about jumping off the page. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, in all of his box scores, the consistency that this young man plays with for the Oklahoma City Thunder, who just continue to, again, I mentioned this about Houston, they beat good teams. They went into Cleveland recently and lost, and then turned around and decisively beat the Cavaliers just a few nights later. And this is without two of their starters, including 7'1" Chet Holmgren, who had a marvelous season last year after missing his rookie year because of injury. And this year was off to a great start. So here's OKC with the best record in the league without their starting center. And I forget, to be honest, the name of the other player that isn't that's injured right now. But they just build around Gilgeous-Alexander, and his consistency on the offensive end. Plus, he's a very good defender. His consistency is impressive to watch. I refer to the box scores. Every time you look at the box score, you don't see Gilgeous-Alexander with 38, 38, and then 6. You see 38, 34, 29 is an off night, 35. And now, this last week, a personal best, 54 points for the Canadian. But I would dare say that perhaps, no, not perhaps, even more impressive than 54, 8, and 5 is Nikola Jokic's recent 35-point, 22 rebound, 17 assists on the surging Denver Nuggets. Denver has been uneven throughout the first half of the season. They would go on good streaks, and then they would come back with some pretty poor play over a few games. But the thread that has been consistent through this first half of the season has been Nikola Jokic, 3-time MVP Nikola Jokic. And last week, our poll question centered around the MVP, and the majority of our voters voted for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And why wouldn't you, on one hand? Because best record in the league with with Gilgeous-Alexander being the center point of it. And that really was the basis, I think, of Jokic's MVPs, is that a good Denver team was completely built around Nikola Jokic. Not only is he a great scorer, not only is he a great rebounder, but he is a phenomenal passer. I believe he's second or third in the league. I didn't look at the stats this morning. Second or third in the league in scoring, rebounding, and assists, plus second or third in the league in three-point field goal percentage. So, and in the top 5 in steals. And everybody who watches Jokic, it's actually quite interesting because when you watch Nikola Jokic, and again, we've talked about this a lot on the basketball show, is Jokic is not a prototypic NBA player. He defies so much of what the NBA is. He's not an explosive leaper. He's not a fast runner. He's not a lightning quick player, but he is technically so sound. And you can really see the difference between the way players are taught and learn how to play in a number of the high-powered European countries in particular, and the way they learn to play in such a diverse way. So you have players like Antetokounmpo from Greece, Nikola Jokic from Serbia. You have Sabonis playing for the Sacramento Kings, also a European country, and his father was a phenomenal, a Hall of Fame player is what he was. But and what am I saying? Luka Doncic. All of these players come with a more well-rounded skill set, I would say, than most North American players. And I have to be careful. I'm not trying to be derogatory, although I do have some opinions that we're going to share on future shows about the basketball system, if you want to call it that. I'd call it the Wild West basketball system in North America. But I think that the way the Europeans build well-rounded players from early stages, the way the players are trained, the way their systems are organized, I guess the proof's in the pudding when I'm referring to these players and the impact that they are having in the NBA. And I mean, let's throw Gilgeous-Alexander in there. Like, he's a North American product, but a very diverse, well-rounded game that I think a lot of people talk about the fact that Gilgeous-Alexander and his mid-range game is one of the difference makers. And so many of the North American basketball instructors have gone away from teaching the mid-range game. They've really swallowed the cyanide of the either play pick and roll, shoot the three, the analytics that go with that, or shoot a layup or a free throw and take away the mid-range shot because they don't attach the same value to those points, which to me is a bunch of just absolute nonsense, be that as it may. Just to see how Jokic with 35 points, 22 rebounds, and 17 assists. Like, if you factor that 5 of those assists, say, were for three-pointers, so that would make 39 points that he assisted on along with his 35. So 74 of Denver's points in that win were attributed to one player's activity and involvement. So watch out for the Denver Nuggets. They've won a championship. They know what it takes. Their basic lineup is intact, with the exception of a surprising Russell Westbrook, who I think has shocked everyone at how well he fits in to OKC and how effective he's been. And I would go back to the same, I guess, attribute that I attached to the impact of Steve Nash when he was in Phoenix, is that certain players make other players so much better by just being a teammate. And Jokic and Westbrook, I would use as an example. They're not Malone and Stockton, but it's a different dynamic. But I think Westbrook has deferred to Jokic's greatness, and now you see Westbrook actually being a net positive contributor, where the last several teams he's been with, he's been anything but that. You're listening to The Basketball Show on Sports 1440. I'm your host, Paul Sir, along with our show's guest producer, Emma Foose. So Denver's coming on. OKC's maintaining its excellent play. 2 other quick things before we go to break. Right now on TV, you have the Indiana Pacers squaring off against the San Antonio Spurs in Paris. And what's interesting is recently Adam Silver has come out and talked about the NBA having its eye on Europe for expansion. Now, that's interesting. And, I mean, I've heard everything from expanding to a team or two or an entire division being in Europe. And anybody that's familiar with European basketball and the Euro League, which is the second best league in the world to the NBA, it's in the level of play in the Euro League is incredible. But the thought that the NBA now has a serious interest in expanding into Europe is interesting, because one of my theories with the NBA is they're pricing themselves out of a lot of North American markets, and their growth has come in China and other foreign countries that have kept their revenue streams up, and that Europe may be the next target for them to stay in front of the rising prices in terms of salaries, et cetera, that they're paying their players. So it'll be interesting to see how far that interest actually moves forward. And my final point is there's been a lot of discussion lately about Steph Curry's, the possibility of whether or not Golden State should trade Steph Curry. This is my third point in my three from deep. I think Steph Curry should finish his career in Golden State. There is no rational reason why he should go other than, I mean, you can look at value. I shouldn't say rational. Business reasons, you can make a case for it. If they can still get value for Steph Curry by sending him to a contender and get immediate talent and draft picks back for that, okay, you can make a case for that. But similar to other players who have played their entire careers with their franchises, and I mean, you look at Bill Russell, you look at Larry Bird, you look at Magic Johnson. I mean, that's a special accomplishment to go to and stay in one place through your entire careers. Stockton and Malone, another example. I mentioned them earlier. I hope Steph stays. He's brought 4 championships to Golden State. He has changed the game of basketball. I was talking with a friend yesterday about how certain players have impacted the game and that have altered it. Bill Russell and the Celtics, Bird, Magic, literally saving the NBA in the 80s. Michael Jordan's impact in the 90s, and now you look at Steph Curry of just how he's changed the way the game is played through his great 3-point shooting. So hopefully Steph Curry stays in Golden State for the remainder of his career. So that's 3 from deep. So we're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Ryan Wolstat from the Toronto Sun, and we're going to do a deep dive into Canada's Toronto Raptors. Are they on their way back now, or are we reading too much in this 4 out of 5 streak? You're listening to The Basketball Show with Paul Sir and Emma Foose here on Sports 1440. Welcome back to The Basketball Show. Paul Sir here with Emma Foose. We are joined by the Toronto Sun's Ryan Wolstat. Ryan, how are you today? We're just having a little technical difficulty, and then we will get Ryan on momentarily. Ryan and I have talked many, many times about the Toronto Raptors, and that's what we're going to focus on this morning. And now I believe we've got Ryan on. Ryan, are you there?
I'm here.
There you go. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Great to have you on. How have you been?
Good. Great to be back.
Good. So, 4 out of 5. Now, that isn't something we've said very often. In fact, not at all this year about the Toronto Raptors. Second road win in Atlanta the other night. In a game, Ryan, that they jumped out big early. Atlanta, on the heels of a back-to-back, came back and, had leads in the fourth quarter, but the Raptors found a way to win. What are your feelings right now? Of course, this is just a snapshot. This isn't the whole season, and it's important not to get overly excited or read too much into it. However, 4 out of 5, a couple of really some high-quality wins. The Raptors are healthier now than they've been all season. So what are your thoughts? What do you see in this team now?
Yeah, I think a lot of what you hit on there, like a key part is getting healthy. I mean, obviously Emmanuel quickly is just having this cursed season after signing that huge contract. So, but other than him, just getting everyone else back in the lineup and having really Kelly Olynyk, who really looked basically finished at the Olympics, and even when he first came back from his injury after missing a couple months, playing really good basketball, reminding people that, hey, he can still play. Like, his game is not built on athleticism. It's on smarts and skill and three-point shooting, and he can still play and help out a team, whether it's the Raptors or someone else. And Bruce Brown finally recovering from his own knee injury that basically ruined his time in Toronto last year, cost him training camp, cost him as well a bunch of months him really playing as well as he has basically since he was helping Denver win a title. That's really helped. And I think Scotty Barnes making some changes to his game, becoming more of a power forward than a point guard, I think has really benefited as well. And just I think maybe a lot of the experience of losing a bunch of tight games early on, they finally sort of found a way to break through and just bring a lot more energy after Darko and even RJ Barrett called them out for maybe not quite playing hard enough on some nights.
Well, and I think that really has been interesting to watch is their increased effort and consistency of all five players on the court, really putting out a great effort. But you mentioned Scotty Barnes, and of course Scotty is regarded as kind of the centerpiece of the rebuild for the Raptors, but very impressive down the stretch. And I think something that the Raptors have lacked is a closer. And the other night against Atlanta, and again, I don't want to read too much into it, but that critical adjustment of power forward versus point guard, but then also him finding a variety of ways to score down the stretch when they needed somebody to take over. That was Scotty Barnes the other night, wasn't it?
It was, and I think it's kind of been coming for a few weeks now. He started developing a nice turnaround jumper. He's working out of the post more. He's taking advantage of the fact that he is longer, more athletic, and as strong as more than most opponents in the NBA. Like he's a special talent, and when he really wants it, he can get it. And he seems to really have been just fed up with all the losing, whether it was last year or this year, and that's why he's been. I think his emotions have been up, his excitement, his leadership has taken a huge leap this year. And I think he wasn't as. I think when he was a rookie on the way to winning Rookie of the Year, he was a little more expressive, a little more demonstrative. Like I just think the energy was more apparent. I'm not saying the energy wasn't always disappeared totally, but it was just more. He was playing with more fun. And if you look back to him in high school or at Florida State, when he was playing really well, he was really enjoying the game and having fun. And it seemed like that left him for a bit. As his kind of fame and everything, but the losses piled up, and then the Raptors trading most of the other core players. I think he lost that a bit. I think he's also gained that back, and with that has come some improved play. Obviously, he's worked on his skills a lot, and he's just decided that, look, that they want me to be the leader. I'm going to be the leader, like on the court with my play and with my actions and with how I sort of present myself as well, and I think it's really paying off for him.
Well, and I think, too, the idea of a long point guard like Scotty Barnes is always intoxicating to a lot of NBA franchises. But the problem with being a point guard is you're also the distributor. You're also the guy that's bringing the ball up and getting everybody else involved. I really like the fact that now Scotty is the go-to player. Like they're looking to get him the ball and for him to make decisions. And he's such a good passer. I think his skills are optimized with him being the go-to player on offense, because if then the other team does make adjustments, he's so capable of distributing to players to get them wide open shots.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And that's, that's sort of what he was billed as a guy. He watched tons of Magic Johnson types of stuff, but he's not quite a Magic guy. Like Magic never was the go-to scorer. Like Scotty sort of has that takeover mentality when he really wants it. And I think it's really benefited them that RJ Barrett, when Barnes was out, when Quickly was out, they made him have that sort of Barnes role and sort of being the guy that either creates or RJ's always been able to get his points, but he can do more. And that's allowed Scotty, as you said, to be more of the go-to guy, the scoring first guy, because now Barrett has shifted from a guy who's only going to go to get his that's what he had to do on the Knicks because everyone else was trying to score. So he had to shoot and when he had it because he didn't get it that much. But now he's really evolved into a guy that's averaging almost 6 assists himself. And that just takes so much pressure off of Barnes, especially with Quickly out, and allows him to show more to his game and grow his game.
I'm talking with Ryan Wolstat of the Toronto Sun here on the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. Ryan, I'd like to talk about the impact of Jakob Poeltl. When Jakob came back to the Raptors, I think there were a lot of people that kind of rolled their eyes and go, what's this? We're recycling a guy that really wasn't that effective when he was here. But man, the other night, they wouldn't have won if they didn't put Poeltl back into the game. And a lot of times he sits in the fourth quarter, but they put Poeltl back, and he was not just effective down the stretch, but his consistency around the basket, his rebounding, he's a good defender. He has, he has surprisingly good feet, quick feet for a big guy. And talk about the impact that Pirtle's play is having on the Raptors.
Well, I think Jakob Pirtle is the difference between having the best shot at Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper and being one of the teams a bit below. That's nothing against Scotty Barnes, who is by far the team's best player, but I think Pirtle is the most important player. When he's in there, it's just night and day defensively. Offensively, he gets them. He's a nice outlet. He can move the ball. He does some good things. He gets tons of offensive rebounds and putbacks. But defensively, this guy turns the Raptors from by far the worst defensive team in the NBA to a passable group. And that's huge. And like you said, he moves his feet. He can stay with anyone. Like, he had to stay with Trae Young, which is very difficult, even for point guards guarding, other guards guarding him. I'm sure Trae helped the Raptors by making some very dumb decisions. I wonder if he'll do it again tonight. I don't know. Him and LaMelo Ball have some similarities. They're fantastic players, but they do some weird stuff. And that helped. But I think Pirtle obviously did a huge, huge job there, staying with him and just being a force in the middle. Doesn't let you score easy, and he's massive. And I think he's public enemy number one of Tank Nation, if you're a Raptor fan that loves tanking, because he's just too effective. That's the thing. And the only way, like you said, when he's shut down, the team stinks. And I think we might get to that point because I think they are going to win a few too many games, but he's just massive. And my only issue with the Pirtle thing was I think they should have got him. I think I talked with you about it before. They should have went for him a year earlier when they got Thaddeus Young from the Spurs instead.
Yep.
When they still had Siakam and Anunoby and Fred VanVleet. But they didn't, and it was a little late, but that doesn't mean he's not a fantastic player for them. And I think he's still young enough that, you get him to sign an extension, you keep him around for when things turn around. That's what I would do. I wouldn't, and you didn't ask, but I wouldn't move him out for a pick definitely at this trade deadline.
So let's before we go into that, which is a really important topic, is what next for the Raptors. I do want to touch on the play of Bruce Brown and the fact that Raptors fans are finally getting to see who Bruce Brown really is as a player. He made a couple of back cuts the other night, and I remember it was Jack Armstrong that made the comment on the call of the game. It was, that guy knows how to play. And I think that Ryan is one of the delineations between players. When you watch them play, you see players who read, interpret, and react to what is available to them. And then you see a lot of players who just don't. They're physically gifted, they're highly skilled, but their ability to read situations and make instantaneous decisions, it just isn't there. And it's somewhat unteachable, but Bruce Brown has it. Let's just call it it. Mm-hmm. And those two back cuts to me demonstrated that, because those are difference makers in a game. And you can see like a guy like Bruce Brown with Jokic, my God, that's like, here you go, have the full buffet. Because anytime you back cut and you're open, you're going to get the ball. But to see Jakob, who's a good passer in his own right, hit him on a couple of back cuts the other night, that's a fantastic addition for this Raptors team.
Mm-hmm. And that's why he's such a good role player and so valued, because I don't know if he had that before, but he definitely learned it. Playing first with Kevin Durant and James Harden in Brooklyn, he had to learn, look, I'm not going to be given the ball and get out of the way. I'm going to have to get myself open. And then he just honed it perfectly when he was playing with Jokic in Denver. And now he's fantastic at it, and that's why he's so much in demand. And that's why, teams are going to be looking for him. But even if there isn't a fit, like, he'd be a nice piece for the Raptors moving forward. And that's why I think he would have to want to stay. But, I mean, considering giving him a new deal after the season, that makes sense, because he's the type of guy that, R.J. Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Pirtle love finding guys that are going to cut and move off the ball really well. And that's why Brown's such a good fit. That's why also Grady Dick's pretty good at that and getting better all the time. And I think Jacoby Walter is going to work on that as well. But definitely Brown right now is probably the best on the team at just finding ways to get through the seams, find himself open, and plus defensively, he gets after it as well. So he's definitely a nice piece, and it's good to see him playing like this, because last year, like you said, he was kind of felt like he was playing on one leg with his knee issues. So
Ryan, you alluded to it before about the Raptors might win too many games to get into the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes in a very deep draft. I mean, there's other good players out there, but Flagg is I think a lot of people feel for justifiable reasons this could be a generational player. Mm-hmm. But help our listeners understand how the lottery works now in the NBA. It's not like it used to be, where they put those ridiculous ping pong balls in, and you'd be weighted based on how awful your season was. Isn't it now that how many teams have an equal shot at getting the pick?
The bottom 4 now, they changed it, so now they all have that same chance, and then 5 is not too different. It just goes down from there.
Yeah. Okay.
But so it's not the same where you had whatever it was, a huge chance of doing it, of jumping up. Now it's they wanted to discourage tanking, and it's generally worked pretty well. Detroit has been the poster child of how well it's worked. I think they were the worst team 3 years in a row and fell every time. So it definitely works. That's why Washington isn't penciled in for a Cooper flag right now. But yeah, it makes it harder to get that pick. So I think you're alluding to, even if they do win a few games, it's not the end of the world, because it's not like it used to be. If you don't finish bottom 3, your odds aren't that much worse than those other teams. So I don't know. Right now they're a bit closer to the bottom of the standings in the play-in, but I suspect unless they start trading away some of those veterans or some injuries hit again, that by the end of the year they'll probably be closer. I don't think they're going to make the play-in, but I think they'll be closer to the play-in than to the Wizards. So I don't know. They're going to be kind of in between and hoping for a lot of lottery luck.
We're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we'll be with Joe Morgan, and we're going to talk about the Los Angeles area, and we're going to talk about Jimmy Butler, Philadelphia 76ers, so we're going to have a great NBA discussion. You're listening to The Basketball Show with Paul Sir and Emma Foose here on Sports 1440. Welcome back to The Basketball Show. I'm Paul Sir. I'm your host, Emma Foose, our guest producer for the day, and I'd like to welcome back to Edmonton Joe Morgan. He's with Fox News Headlines 24/7, Fox News Radio out of Los Angeles. Joe, welcome back to the Great White North.
Hey, Paul. It's great to be back with you. Just sitting down, watching some Pacers Spurs in Paris, which is fantastic, by the way, the second game here. I've really enjoyed it.
We've got it on the screen here in the studio as well, so I must admit I'm glancing up at it. I was commenting in my opening segment, Joe, about Adam Silver coming out, talking about the strong consideration it seems like the NBA has about possible European expansion. The thing about Europe that's interesting is, the Euro League, all of the leagues in the various countries over there are so developed, and they have so much tradition around it. It's not soccer, but, in its own right, it has a deep tradition. What do you think the impact would be, not only on the NBA in North America, but bringing the NBA into that European setting?
I mean, the amount of international players that are in the NBA now, the amount of stars, I should say,
yes,
that are in the NBA now. I mean, I have to actually look at it, but, with Jokic and Wembanyama and Luka, I mean, the best players right now really are international. And at some point you have to think the NBA does something like that. They've obviously wanted, just like all the other, the NFL is the same way, where you want to grow, and the only way to do that is to go global. I think European basketball is amazing. I mean, you see Wembanyama, just watching him, but then he is obviously the future of the NBA. But 20, 30 years ago, we didn't think that a lot of these European players would translate to the NBA. And it's obviously now the complete opposite. And obviously that has something to do with the competition level in Europe. I mean, this is just a side note, but watching Wemby on, I think it was Thursday, I can't believe how developed he is and how good he is. He can do everything, not to mention the defense that he brings to the table in San Antonio, leading the NBA in blocks. But he had a catch in the post off of a bad pass. I haven't seen too many guys make a play like he did on Thursday at his size, at his athletic ability. It's amazing. I think the NBA obviously will seriously look into expanding, somewhere in Europe or whatever they end up doing. But it makes sense to me, Paul.
And I'm conflicted. And the reason I'm conflicted is because I have such a deep respect for the way Europe has handled their basketball development at the highest level, but the way that they start at the grassroots level. There's an orderliness in the way basketball is taught and how kids learn it, how it's coached. And to your point that you made before, Joe, it's no accident that Jokic, Sabonis, Wembanyama, Luka, Antetokounmpo are 4 of the top 6 players in the league. And, you know, there's no mistake there. They do all of the things really well, and the way they read and interpret the game along with their skill development, I think is a testament to what they do over in Europe, whereas in North America, there's a lot of great coaches, there's a lot of great programs, but there's a lot of other stuff in really kind of a Wild West developmental system.
Well, and we've heard, that's an interesting point, Paul. We hear a lot about the AAU here in America, and maybe there's a way to look at what they're doing in Europe to find a better way of developing players, because it's pretty obvious that most of the best players are coming from over there, except, you know, this coming draft with Cooper Flagg out of Duke, you know, we'll see how he translates. But no, it's a decent point. I just think when it comes to these leagues, at some point you have to look that direction in order to expand. The NFL, you would think, would do the same thing with all the games that they have going on in Germany and London. So I just think it's inevitable. And it would be interesting. I've really enjoyed watching these past 2 games in Paris. The fans are into it.
100%.
I think they're ready for it. So I don't know. I don't know what the time frame would be for that, Paul. I'm sure it would take a lot of time, but I think it would be very interesting to explore.
I think you're right, and when you talk about, I mean, the world's so small now with social media, with all of the ways you can consume content of sports, news, whatever your choice is, that it's no longer decades ago where, you know, it was rare that an NBA game would be broadcast overseas. Everybody's watching NBA now, and I mean, Paris, like you said, completely into it, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So it's exciting to think about. It really is. So, Joe, let's talk about the NBA right now. There's a couple of there's a couple of stories that I had Ben Golliver on the first show that we had, and we were reflecting on his days with Sports Illustrated, and they had and maybe they still have that column of, you know, the apocalypse is upon us and at that time the point was the consideration of maybe Phoenix trading Bradley Beal for Jimmy Butler. Talk about Jimmy Butler. Tell me what you think about Jimmy Butler and his shtick and the way I mean, we all know about his toughness. We all know about his really difficult upbringing. We all know those things, and I don't want to diminish them. But this guy, when he goes into franchises, he does something that's really, really unusual and honestly really destructive to teams.
Yeah, and he's gotten his way in the past, right? I'm really curious I'm really curious to see how this plays out in Miami. I guess with the structure of the new, you know, NBA with the first and the second apron, Paul, it's not easy to trade these guys, right? So like 5-6 years ago, around the trade deadline, there were guys just moving left and right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem to be the case anymore, and it's because of the way that it's been structured. So my question is, I would assume that he would get moved. I would think so. I mean, just because historically, if you look at it, guys that ask out do end up getting their way. And Paul, maybe you can help me with this. I don't see where the trade is. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And I know that there's some teams that have been named on that list. It's Phoenix. I've seen Golden State. I've seen Dallas. I read something the other day on ESPN. I think it was Bobby Marks, who was saying that those 3 teams right there, if they went to go get Jimmy, they'd have to trade like a quarter of their roster to get him. And so I don't know how this is going to play out. To go back a little bit, my question is, so he's 35, right? And he wanted that extension in the summer and didn't get it. If you're an NBA team, are you just obligated to give an extension no matter what if a star asks for it? Like, regardless of where you're trying to go and the production, et cetera, because Jimmy's still a very good player, no doubt. But he is getting older. He hasn't played more than, I think it's 64 games with the Miami Heat. So I guess it's this interesting situation where there's clearly unhappiness, but he's still under contract. And I don't think that we're living in the same NBA that we were living in 5 years ago, where these moves are as easy as they used to be.
No, I think you nailed it on the head. And when you talk about the NBA 5 years ago, Joe, that's absolutely right. The player power, the ability, and what I find particularly fascinating is this is in Miami with Pat Riley. I mean, right. I mean that in and of itself is crazy to think about. Pat Riley being challenged by Jimmy Butler. I mean, Jimmy Butler is a great player, or was a great player, but his body's breaking down. Father Time wins every battle. That's going to continue to happen, but. The dissatisfaction when you're being paid tens of millions of dollars is really, really hard, I think, for most NBA fans to stomach.
Sure.
And Butler's consistent problems, whether it was Minnesota, whether it was Philadelphia, now it's Miami. Leopard doesn't change its spots. And I don't know where the deal is unless you're going to do some sort of swap with Phoenix with the other problem child, who is Bradley Beal. Who is he and Butler should be having coffee every day because they could commiserate because they're both equally miserable. So I want to jump over to the 76ers now, and I'm talking with Joe Morgan from Fox News Headlines 24/7 and Fox News Radio out of Los Angeles here on the Basketball Show. Let's talk about the Sixers. They had a nice win last night. They beat the Cleveland Cavaliers without Joel Embiid, and I think we were both ready. And probably still are ready to hop on the world of the Sixers trying to do pile. But tell me your overarching view. Like I always go back to this nonsense about the process and Embiid's.
Yep.
I mean, it's great. It would have been great if it worked, and it sure as heck hasn't worked because that poor guy's body just betrays him every time. But talk about the 76ers. What do you think their next moves are?
I look. They're in a situation. Coming back from the summer, right, where I was definitely a person who thought with the Paul George acquisition that they would be able to compete in that Eastern Conference with Maxey and Embiid. But everything hinges on Joel Embiid being healthy. And he just hasn't been throughout his career. And so if you're looking at the Sixers situation, it's a brutal situation because Joel signed that extension in the summer. Obviously, you have Paul George signing with them in the summer. I don't know what the move is. The question now is, I think I don't know if it's 2 or 2.5 games back of the final play-in spot in the Eastern Conference. Do you make a run to try to get into the play-in, or are you looking to protect that top 6 protected draft pick that they have? I would think that if Joel finds his way to get healthy, you have to go for it, right? Because you have all this talent on the team. It's obviously not a good situation, Paul. And I don't even think if you get into that play-in, do we really think that they're making a deep run in the playoffs if somehow they get miraculously healthy, right? If everybody's there, I just don't think you have enough time now to gel as a unit with the new addition of Paul George, either to make a run in the Eastern Conference. I think the Celtics are very clearly, they look like they're on cruise control. Cleveland is, I can't believe how good they are. And then Milwaukee is obviously playing quite a bit better. So I just don't think Philly has a chance of making a run in the playoffs as currently constructed. But I almost think you have to go for it. If Joel Embiid if something happens with Joel where like he's out for the year or something, then I totally would get it. But I think at this point you almost have to make a run at it.
Well, I think so too, Joe, and I think you summarized it really, really well. What their challenge is, the thing I always go back to with the NBA is it's such a marathon. You know, the season's so bloody long.
Yeah.
There's a hypothetical.
Probably too long, Paul.
That would be a great discussion. I would. They'd have no pushback from me about the season being too long. But I also look at like Joel now, like 5 games from now, Joel Embiid gets healthy, stays healthy the rest of the way. Paul George gets back into playing like Paul George would be expected to play.
Right.
Maxey's a great player. He's a talent. He's a real talent. Now you've got your 3 maybe, and, Philadelphia started out dismally. Embiid got healthy. They had a pretty good run. Embiid is not healthy. George is hurt. Like they have all these, just the nasty injuries. But now it'll be interesting to see as the season unfolds, and you encapsulated it really well. As Joel Embiid's health goes, so go the 76ers and what their strategy should be for the rest of the year.
Yep. Well, and you got to think it's just so interesting when you look back on it now with the Clippers going the direction that they went and not giving George that fourth year. I think is really interesting too. We started having these conversations once again. We go back to the Jimmy Butler thing, about giving guys who are getting up there in age these big extensions, and does that end up backfiring? And, right now you got to think for Philly, it hasn't worked out. I think it's going to be super interesting to see what they end up doing. And look, it is a shame, by the way, Paul, that Joel can't stay healthy, because when he is healthy, I mean, he's so dominant. He's so dominant. And I do think that if he's a guy who, when you get to the playoffs, that knee is okay, it's hard for me to count that guy out. I will say that. But it's just, you can't, there's no confidence in that he's going to be healthy come playoff time. It's just, you can't say that just historically.
100%. Well, Joe, unfortunately, we're out of time. I'd love to get you back on and spend the segment on just Los Angeles, the Clippers and the Lakers. Sure. Because I think it would be a fascinating discussion with the new facility for the Clippers. LeBron at 40, like that. That's a book that I'd love to write with you in a show in the near upcoming future. So I'll be in touch with you soon. But man, is it great to connect with you again. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me on, Paul. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Joe Morgan, Fox Headline News, also Fox Radio in Los Angeles, joining us here on the Basketball Show. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be speaking with Reed Clark, the CEO of Sport Edmonton, also of his Fresh Nets Foundation. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things, not just in Edmonton, but hoops in general with Reed. So thanks so much for making us a part of your Saturday morning. I'm your host, Paul Sir, along with producer Emma Foose. You're listening to the Basketball Show on Sports 1440.